Welcome to episode 2 of Black Cults. Allow me to introduce you to the Nuwaubian Nation of Moors. The Nuwaubian Nation of Moors, or just Nuwaubians as they're referred to, was founded by self-proclaimed Dr. Malachi York, born Dwight York in Massachusetts in 1945. Little is known about York's childhood, and much of it is unconfirmed. York claims that at the age of 7, he moved to Egypt to study Islam and returned to the U.S. at the age of 12 to finish his studies. One thing that can be confirmed is that at the age of 19, York caught a statutory rape charge for which he was placed on probation. And after violating his probation, he got caught with a deadly weapon. York served 3 years in prison. After serving his sentence, he moved to Harlem to hustle, mainly slinging pamphlets he had written, as well as selling incense and going by the name of, try not to butcher this, Iman Isa Abdullah ibn Abu Bakr Muhammad. Along the way, amassing a handful of followers who mainly lived with him in his apartment he shared with his wife. This group he named the Ansar Pure Sufi, but at some point in the 1970s, he relocated the group to Brooklyn and changed the name to the Ansar Allah community. At this point, York's philosophy was not unlike Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. In one of York's famous speeches, he states Christianity is merely a tool used by the devil, the pale man, to keep you, the Nubian, black man, woman, and child blind in your true heritage and your perfect way of life, Islam. It is another means of slavery. The Ansar Allah community, men were sent to the streets to sell pamphlets and books and incense. The literature raised money for York and his group, but it also promoted the AAC and encouraged readers to come and hear York preach. York went by several names while leading the group, and it was at this time he began to adopt the moniker Dr. Malachi York. Within the span of about 10 years, York and the AAC had a come-up. Membership exploded to about 500 members, which he relocated to the Bushwick area of Brooklyn. They lived in brownstones that he owned. They operated bookstores, gift shops, a clothing store, and a grocery store. AAC chapters were founded in other U.S. cities and abroad in Trinidad, London, and Toronto. If you wanted to be down with the AAC, you were required to give up all your earthly possessions, move into one of the many apartments that he owned, and work for free. You were required to reach a quota of about $25 to $100 a day to cover your living expenses. Those who did not meet their quotas were beaten or otherwise disciplined by the big homies. York controlled his followers' lives almost completely. He chose their spouses, mating them according to his whim. Men and women lived in separate buildings. When they wanted to have sex, they were forced to ask permission to use a designated room. Sex was a privilege to a spouse. When one's duties had been performed satisfactorily, you were allowed to. It is alleged that York used his followers as his personal harem, if you will, with claims that he was able to have sex with any woman in the cult. He allegedly impregnated many of these women. He is speculated to have close to 100 children. Between the 80s and the 90s, York racked up a gang of accolades, being awarded the key to the city by Mayor Ed Koch after cleaning up the slum and drug-infested Bushwick Avenue community in New York. Being named one of the state's most 50 influential men by the Georgia Informer, he generated millions of dollars in revenue for himself through entrepreneurial ventures. He launched his own record label, Passion Records, and recorded himself as a solo artist. Imagine the DeBarge mind frame. Throughout the years, York's philosophies and teachings changed, and I mean a lot. An article from the Pan-African Alliance states, no matter what the underlying doctrine of the movement was, Dr. Malachi York absorbed it into his teachings. At different times, his organization was a Hebrew Israelite, Sufi, Christian, Kemetic Science, and Orthodox Islamic movement. You can see by the pseudonyms that his organization operates under. Go on to include the United Nuwaubian Nation of Moors, the Yamasee Native American Moors of Creek Nation, Ansar Allah, the Ansar Pure Sufi community, and so on and so forth. There's about 20 different names. With each of the philosophies the Nuwaubian claimed as their own, their names and teachings changed to suit. Not only exclusive to the group, but York's name or pseudonym would change as frequently as well. Some of them including Amunbi Rockpot, Chief Black Eagle, Dr. Malakazi York, Isa Al-Hadi Al-Hamadi, and a few others. Fast forward to 1993, York buys a 476-acre property in Putnam County, Georgia, and moved there with his members from the Brooklyn chapter. The largest town in the region was Eatonton, with a population of about 6,764 in the year 2000. Authorities speculate that the move may have been prompted by the fact that the group had been being investigated by the FBI for criminal acts allegedly committed by its members in Brooklyn, including arson, welfare fraud, and illegal possession of weapons. In Georgia, York dropped the pretenses of being a Muslim. As mentioned before, the group went through several names and identities. This is when York claimed to be Chief Black Eagle of the Yamasee Native American Moors of the Creek Nation. He even applied for a license to operate a casino. After this failed, York settled on calling his group the United Nation of Nuwaubian Moors, using an Egyptian motif. He also started identifying himself as a god from outer space, from the planet Risk to be exact. York had followers build 2 pyramids out of wood and stucco and other Egyptian-style buildings around the compound. The compound they called Tamare. Most of the Nuwaubians at Tamare lived in cheap trailers, while York lived in a mansion on the property. As many as 400 Nuwaubians lived in the surrounding areas. York's operation became very profitable. During a June 1998 Savior's Day, at the Georgia compound, York took in about $500,000. He charged the Nuwaubians $500 a year for their Nuwaubian passports, which he allowed them to enter and exit the compound with. A network of chapters and bookstores called All Eyes on Egypt also brought in funds, and members continued to raise money through begging and holding jobs. One of the group's sources of revenue was a nightclub called Club Ramses. It was illegally operated in one of the Tamare pyramids, which had been zoned only for use as a storage facility. In May 1998, police officers shut down the club. In response, Nuwaubians printed slanderous articles about the government officials in Eatonton. They threatened town leaders and disrupted government board meetings. After attorney Frank Ford represented the county in a lawsuit against the Nuwaubians, his tires were slashed by Nuwaubian spokesman Bernard Foster. A rock was thrown through his office window, and a gutted dog was left in the street next to his house. Also, Putnam County Sheriff Howard Seals was sent a number of anonymous death threats. The Nuwaubians claimed that the town's attempt to regulate their buildings were racially motivated. One Nuwaubian flyer referred to 2 local black leaders as house niggers. Though these allegations gained little traction in Eatonton, they received national attention. Al Sharpton came to Tamare in 1998 to speak against the town's ostensible racism. Jesse Jackson spoke at Tamare in support of the Nuwaubians in the year 2000. Jacob York, one of York's oldest sons, who left the organization in 1990, learned about his father's Tamare compound in 1998, and he flipped out. He went to Georgia to confront his father. According to Jacob, York told him, "I don't believe in any of this shit. If I had to dress up like a nun, if I had to be a Jew, I'd do it for this type of money." Jacob worked to build a case against York by helping Sheriff Seals find and interview victims of his father's abuse. The story goes, Jacob pulls up to the sheriff's office and told the sheriff that his father had been molesting underage girls since their days back in Bushwick, Brooklyn. The sheriff in turn tells Jacob, "Okay, that's great, but all that is at this point is just hearsay and accusations. Do you have any actual evidence? Do you have a witness?" And Jacob goes, "I can do you one better. I got one of his victims in the whip right now." You see, starting in the year 2000, several women had began coming forward with paternity claims and child support actions against both York in New York and in Georgia. These allegations, along with rumors that York had both raped boys and girls as young as 5 years old, led to Dr. York's last stand. On May 8th, 2002, FBI agents and Putney County Sheriff's offices raided the Nuwaubian village. Dr. Malachi York was arrested and charged with over 100 counts of child molestation. York was not helped by his bizarre behavior in court, where he appeared alternatively in full Egyptian, Masonic, or Native American regalia and claimed to be outside the U.S.'s jurisdiction, either as a leader of a sovereign Native American nation or as a Liberian diplomat, a claim to this day the Liberian authorities do not confirm. Or he just simply said that he was God or the Messiah. Regalia and bizarre claims were interpreted by the media as an unsuccessful plot by York to persuade the court that he was mentally insane. York was ultimately sentenced to 135 years in prison on state charges. He was convicted on 4 counts of racketeering and 6 counts of molestation-related charges. The racketeering charges enabled the government to evict the Nuwaubians from Tamaray and confiscate their property. I was introduced to York by a neighbor in 2010. And what's interesting is doing this research on the group, information is really split between followers or supporters of the group versus the mainstream media. On one hand, I can see how people appreciate his work, black people mainly. Not only that, but York was going in on the power structure, calling out organizations like the Bilderbergers Group, going in on the Illuminati back in the early 90s. I mean, hell, he had even been championed by people like Nas, Prodigy, from Mobb Deep. They even have video footage of Jay-Z, a young Jay-Z, handing out some of York's information. Bro, Mark Lamont Hill was a Nuwaubian. He claims that he left the group when he saw that young boys were being molested.
Shout out to Dr. York. You know what I mean? He's doing 135 years right now. Hope you.
Like Dr. Malachi York, cause I talk like Dr. Malachi York. Cause I talk like Dr. Malachi York. Play the sidewalk.
Let me tell you something. Not only will they persecute you, they'll lie on you. They'll fabricate lies. They'll imprison you and create cases around you. The same way they tried to defame Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and then they tried to defame Malcolm X, and then they even tried to defame Dr. Martin Luther King by some secretary. That's what they'll do. They'll imprison you, and then they'll create lies to turn your own people against you. They'll persecute you after righteous name's sake. The same way I'm talking to you, they're going to come after me eventually. Believe me. They're going to say, that man is too dangerous. I don't like him. Let's make some lies up on him. Let's turn his people against him. Let's imprison him. And if we can, let's kill him because his people won't help him anyway.
Like the great Dr. Malachi York was. Cause I talk like Dr. Malachi York.
Then there was Dr. Malachi York,
consulted by the son of Malachi York.
Donkey.
70 miles southeast of Atlanta, Eatonton is the seat of Putnam County, best known as the dairy capital of Georgia.
Oh, they got 400 and something acres. Goes up to that corner yonder.
William Larman is a dairyman, and he's talking about his new neighbors.
Oh, yeah, I'm happy for them.
But they are not dairymen.
Because they said they come from what? Rich. Planet Rich, I think.
It is not a joke to the people who've built these 2 large pyramids and elaborate Egyptian-style ornamentation and put up rows of double-wide homes on some 400 acres of rural Putnam County farmland and woodland.
How many people live here?
Got different families living.
It's a place that granted our request for a visit inside the secured gate, allowed us to watch the workers build new ceremonial structures, allowed us to listen close up to the continuous chant broadcast from a speaker bank at the top of one of the pyramids.
For people that want to get spiritually in tune with the innocent.
But for the most part, sidestepped our requests for answers.
What about the guy from another planet?
We'll make sure you get all of them.
Are they a cult?
Depends on definition of a cult. Certainly there are many characteristics similar with other entities that are defined as cults.
How long you lived here?
About 6-7 months.
Jerry, our tour guide, says he came here from Alabama. The sheriff says most of the other residents come from the Northeast, New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore. How many, including how many children, is unclear.
He's Yanun?
He's known by many names.
The group's leader is identified in literature as Malachi Zodok York, the Supreme Grand Master. He is described as a charismatic speaker and apparently a prolific writer, producing monthly newsletters and dozens of books.
He says that he is from the 8th planet in the 19th galaxy of Eliwan, a universe far outside of this one. Does it make sense to you?
That's in the book. If he wrote it, then yeah. We're from Orion. Dr. York is from Risk. He's from Orion. What's the deal? It's nothing strange. It's just new to the public.
The vast majority of cults are started by an individual who's extremely charismatic, who's very confident, very commanding, in some cases very demanding, expects an awful lot of the followers.
So this is the Compound nightclub?
No, it's not a compound.
Oh, it's not a compound? I'm sorry.
Not at all.
The centerpiece of the Putnam County property is a nightclub the group opened in October. At midday, it was in high decibel preparation for an upcoming party. Outside, there were parked 3 stretch limousines.
It's an Egyptian theme park.
This is a theme park?
An Egyptian theme park.
Now, there's some people who think this is a cult.
Well, there's 2 ways to look at it. We don't happen to have a religious belief. You follow what I'm saying? Now, on the other hand, culture, there's a connection there. So if you say we're a cult in the sense of we found a culture that works for us, yeah.
Are they dangerous?
I have no information to indicate that they are dangerous.
What they are is a roadside curiosity to native Putnam Countyans, and to the folks inside the gate, a community with children and entertainment, and an Egyptian theme, and a leader they call Grandmaster, who writes that he's from another planet.
Maybe the spaceship come in here and I could get away with him. We don't know.
You see all that we're building out there?
Yeah.
Does it look like we're going anywhere soon to you? We build it. It's so beautiful out there. It's a beautiful, peaceful environment where we invite any nationality, any race to come out and visit.
Welcome to episode 268 of FBI Retired Case File Review with Jerry Williams. I'm a retired agent on a mission to show you who the FBI is and what the FBI does. Today, we get to speak to retired agents Jelaine Ward and Joan Cronier. They discuss their investigation of cult leader Dwight D. York of the United Nation of Nuwaubian Moors. York used his charisma to recruit thousands of followers. Several hundred cult members lived with their children on his 475-acre compound in Putnam County, Georgia, where, for years, he sexually molested boys and girls, 18 to as young as 3 years old. In 2004, York was convicted and sentenced to 135 years in federal prison without parole. The FBI code name for the investigation was Operation One Man Act. Jelaine and Joan, along with other members of their prosecutive team, received the Attorney General's Award for Distinguished Service for their work on this case. Retired Agent Jelaine Ward served in the FBI for nearly 27 years. She was assigned to the Atlanta Division, Macon Resident Agency. She worked a variety of investigations with an expertise in white-collar crime, violent crime, and crimes against children. She was the National Center of Analysis for Violent Crime and Crimes Against Children coordinator for the Atlanta Division for over 20 years and received extensive training in behavioral analysis, threat assessment, interview and interrogation, crisis management, school violence, and the sexual exploitation of children. Currently, Jelaine operates Integris, LLC, a private investigative security and threat assessment consulting service. Retired Agent Joan Cronier served in the FBI for 20 years. Joan spent her bureau career in the Atlanta Division, where she utilized her financial crimes education and experience on white-collar crime and government fraud squads. After the successful investigation and prosecution of David York, Joan switched her focus to crimes against children. She spent several years as a member and coordinator on an Innocent Images Crimes Against Children task force. Since retiring, Joan works as a consultant and investigator on the global cybersecurity team of a Fortune 100 company. Before you listen to the case review, I need to issue a trigger warning. We discuss graphic descriptions of child sexual abuse. I want to welcome my guests, retired agents Jelaine Ward and Joan Cronier. Hey, Jelaine, how are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Hi, Joan.
Hey, Jerry. Thanks for having us.
Both of you worked on this case, and I know there's so many people in the true crime audience who follow cults, but this may be one that they're not aware of. This case is going to focus on Dwight York. He called his followers and the compound that they lived in down in Georgia, where you were, the Nuwaubian Nation. Before we get into who Dwight York is, Jelaine, could you talk about how you became involved in the case? And then Joan will talk to you about what role you played.
I got involved in the case a couple years before the key witness came in, only in the sense that I was assisting Agent Tom Deal. He had a source that had ties to that community and was giving him some information, and there were allegations of copyright violations, narcotics, trafficking, stockpiling weapons, things like that. When I got involved was when we had two potential witnesses that alleged sexual abuse, or there was possible abuse. We interviewed those witnesses in Memphis, Tennessee, and basically learned that there was secondhand information and really no direct knowledge. They had seen things. They had seen girls go into York's bedroom or go upstairs in that compound, but they'd never been abused themselves or actually witnessed anything. That case did not materialize, and it was eventually incorporated into the case that I opened in 2001.
And Joan?
Let me kind of tell you, Jerry, how I got involved. This was like around 2000, maybe 2001. A couple of the agents were doing a undercover operation. I was assigned to help out with that. So when I first started, I only did it for a couple weeks, a couple months maybe. There really wasn't a lot of work for me to do, so I was looking to get something started and get involved in something interesting. So I was reading through the files, and I noticed that a lot of the reports referred to Nuwaubian compound and Dwight York in Macon. And at one point, they had a intel case open when it was transferred to Atlanta from New York, but it had been closed. So I'm like, there seems to be a lot of smoke here. Maybe there's something worth investigating further. I noticed that they had a case in Macon signed to Tom Deal and Jelaine. So I called Jelaine. I was like, I'm interested in looking at this, seeing if there seems to be some leads that we could pursue if interested. And we started talking. I don't really remember how it happened, but at some point, not long after that, Jelaine called and said one of the, what do we want to call her, a ex-Nuwaubian or somebody that had left, wanted to come in and tell her story. She came in with the sheriff to the Atlanta office, and we sat down and talked to her. And that was kind of my first opening in the case.
Jelaine, you were assigned to an RA out of the Atlanta division, right?
Macon RA.
Okay, that's a resident agency, and it's actually like a satellite office out of the Atlanta division, and that's where Joan was.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about Dwight York and how he ended up in Georgia.
Dwight David York started a pseudo-Muslim type community in New York, Brooklyn, New York, had a group called the Nubian Islamic Hebrews, not accepted by the legitimate Muslim communities in that area, and basically run out of there.
So he moved to upstate New York, Sullivan County, in about 1989. So he stayed there until he purchased the property in Putnam County, Georgia, in January of 1993.
Investigation of him started in our district when he purchased the property in Eatonton, Georgia, which I was going to look up the population, but you have to appreciate Putnam County and Eatonton, Georgia, to be just a small town. I'm sure it's less than 20,000 people, and then moved to a rural area and bought a piece of property for $500,000 and puts like a $400,000 cash down payment on it. It was about 476 acres, 19 acres containing living space. So what happened is when he initially moved there, He just put up a couple shacks to stay, and he brought a few followers with him. He didn't move full-fledged onto the compound, so kind of laid in the weeds and didn't attract a lot of attention at first. But then when he brought in more followers as the years went on, then he started to try to get permits from the county and run a production studio and do different things. Sheriff Sills and a lot of community leaders started to have a lot of problems with Dwight York and a lot of his followers. And we're trying to address those problems. So it kind of starts back then where the sheriff comes to us and wants some help with it. To make that story short, he just follows his request for assistance, and Deal was the case agent at the time. He had an informant that had given him information about some of the illegal activities going on there. So they tried to get some interest from the U.S. Attorney's Office, but there was none at the time. It fell on the heels of Waco and Ruby Ridge. The U.S. Attorney's Office at the time basically said, no, this is a religious organization, just leave it alone. Naturally, Sheriff Sills was frustrated with that.
I believe he was getting calls from parents as well.
Yes, good point. Yes, he was.
Looking for their children, grown-ups. None of them were minors on the compound who wouldn't return their calls or didn't know if they were being held against their will.
Yeah, they would be missing and they didn't know if they were there.
Parents who were calling their adult children were missing.
That's right, correct.
And these were the kind of things that the U.S. Attorney's Office initially did not want to get involved in.
Nope, they did not. And I want to also mention that when we say what their group is called, the United Nation of Nuwaubian Moors, we obviously were not targeting them at all in terms of followers. It had nothing to do with what they believe or their membership. We weren't looking at them at all as villains in this. I think they felt like that somewhat when we did the search, that we were breaking up their world in a sense, coming into the compound. But really, we had nothing against the followers in terms of their choices to worship or to follow and stuff. It just had to do with, obviously, what we felt like was a Wizard of Oz and a charade involving Dwight York. He eventually has like 300 plus followers there, including 50 to 100 children. He had all these kind of identities that he used over that period of time, and certainly while he was in Georgia. Some of his known names: Iman Isa Al-Hadi, Melchizedek, Chief Black Eagle, the Master Teacher, Rabbi York. So when he first got to Putnam County, when he first got here, he started with an American Indian kind of theme. He called it Egypt of the West, Egyptology combined with American Indians, and they dressed in cowboy hats and jeans and boots. And he wore a headdress and called himself Chief Black Eagle. He's gone through several themes. The alien theory is going to take them to Planet Risk in 2003, and there'll only be 144,000 followers chosen. And he just had a lot of people fooled.
I looked at some of the images and photos that you've shared with me, and you're right. 1 minute he is dressed as a Native American chief. The next minute he's an Egyptian pharaoh, I guess. Next minute, some type of Islam sheikh, and his followers just seem to kind of go along with it. What do you think, Joan?
I don't think he believed any of his philosophies, really. Why do they follow him? I honestly... It's like any cult.
Where is he getting this money that he could spend that much on buying property in Georgia? How is he making his money?
I think that's a good one for Joan to answer. You knew more about his financial design.
Sure. So understand that York did have a lot of followers outside of his compound. He was a prolific writer, and he sold a lot of books. So he had several stores throughout the country, and he sold his books. He also would have parties and charge entrance fees. Like he would have his birthday parties, his own birthday party in June. I can't recall what he called the party. He could make $400,000 just on entrance fees and selling $4 for a bottle of water. And it was all cash. He would also charge people who wanted to be part of the group. They submitted applications and he charged a fee for those. He had plenty of money coming in, and it was almost all cash. He would have, I think we'll get to it, we found one suitcase of cash when we did the search warrant.
Another thing I wanted to ask, Jelaine was saying that the U.S. Attorney's Office was hesitating in getting involved in the initial case because they deemed his quote-unquote cult a religious group, a religious organization.
Jerry, what happened there is we got a new U.S. attorney, It was the leadership had changed at the time. And so then we were able to move forward. And especially, of course, as we were able to interview a couple witnesses, the key witnesses that cooperated, that's obviously when the case broke open. But we did get more interest after we had a new U.S. attorney take office. A lot of those publications that Joan was mentioning, a lot of them were written by his followers as well. A lot of the things that they marketed and the trinkets and sold, the men would run stores in different parts of the states, and they would make, like she said, they make a lot of money from marketing items that were kind of organized and put together by his followers, along with his own publications, of course.
The women followers would work in the office for hours and hours a day on his publications. And I don't think they realized that they were doing like some serious desktop publishing, something they should have been getting paid a lot of money for. And it was all free labor to him.
Yeah.
So it didn't cost him anything to put these books together.
What was his message? What was he sharing that would make these people come to him and want to hear what he had to say?
His sermons were recorded and reviewed by behavioral experts and by us as investigators, etc. He preached that this was going to be a new country with its own fire department, its own hospital, etc., and that they were going to be a sovereign citizenship. By having their own country, it was going to keep the racism out. I had actually heard some of his sermons from surveillance. He preaches racism. He preaches anti-law enforcement. He had a way for reaching followers that were missing something in their life. Some of them were born into the compound. Some of them moved there from, like Joan said, they were at one point 10,000 followers. So they were all over in different states and parts of the country, mostly towards the East Coast, if I'm not mistaken. They would come and follow him because of his promise for calm and peace and something that their family would grow with, only to find out, of course, so much more the opposite of that.
If you study cults, you do see that they all have a charismatic leader, and he definitely was charismatic and had a lot to do with why these people followed him.
Yes, he did. And he has several of the red flags too, because when they moved to the compound, he separated the women from the children, the husbands from the wives, and they all lived in different areas. The children weren't disciplined by their parents. They were disciplined by his women that followed him and that he had sexual relationships with. They were the ones who would feed and house and discipline these children. So he was able to control what they did and what they thought by keeping them away from their parents. And he also would use the victims that he chose. He would use other sexual partners to shun them or influence them if they didn't comply with his wishes or do as he told. So he had a lot of, like you say, Joan, a lot of control over all of them, the men as well. They weren't allowed to go off the compound unless he gave them permission, and then he had to know where they were going or be escorted. The women had their babies in a hospital with armed guards or guards accompanying them to the hospital. So it was definitely hit on many of the dynamics of a cult leader. He would portray himself as a god. You know, he's got all kinds of pictures and depictions of him with white robes and standing over small children and a lamb, just like in the pictures of Jesus. He presents that image to his followers, and then they literally, if you looked in the rooms when we did the search warrant, all of them have pictures on the wall of York portrayed as a godly-like person. It's a lot of control, for sure.
Why do they follow him? It's like any cult. I think they feel like it's a family at some point, and they thought he was their father, the God, and they just went with what he said. Because to disagree was to be shunned by him and the group.
You know, this kind of reminds me of another cult, Yahweh Ben Yahweh. And I actually did an interview, episode 113, about that case. And one of the things that he did was that he had his followers, he demanded that they be involved in violent activities, such as random racial killings. Did Dwight go that far? Was that part of his philosophy, the activities he had his followers do?
I know that he had his followers harass and vandalize property in the community and harass the leaders and the various community members, planning and zoning commissions and things like that. That was all early on more what the sheriff was dealing with at the time. I interviewed a male witness that at some point he had thought about killing the sheriff and had talked about it with his male followers, but obviously decided that that would bring too much attention to him. and had changed his mind. But I don't know of any killings. I wouldn't say for sure, but we were told that there were allegations of arson and murder and crimes like that in New York. Joan, do you know anything else where he would have actually carried out a murder?
No, not in Georgia.
I mean, he threatened now. I mean, he threatened the judge. He threatened the witnesses. We had to have special protection for our witnesses during the trial. The U.S. Marshals in charge of all that and accompanied the witnesses each day to the trial. So he certainly threatened to do harm. He threatened his followers if they would file child support lawsuits. And of course, he threatened Judge Royal. There were definitely a few threats that we dealt with after the trial, really right up until my retirement for Judge Royal. We identified someone that was allegedly supposed to travel and cause harm. Either we thwarted it or it just never came to fruition. Certainly think he was capable of it. And it's something that we talked about a lot, I guess, in preparing for the search and the entry. Was he going to kill himself? Would he kill others? You know, obviously our objective was to arrest him off of the compound, not on with his followers, because we felt like that could have generated a problem.
There was a lot of allegations, stockpiling of weapons. The Sheriff Howard Sills, he was just looking for help on what can we do? Is there anything we can do? And then when our victim witness came through saying she wanted to talk, she provided such detail as, okay, we have people we can talk to, interviews we can do to pursue interstate transportation, transporting children across state lines for the purpose of
sexual exploitation of children.
So our victim witness came in May of 2001, and she was at the time in her early 20s, and she had been born into the Nuwaubian compound. She was born in 73, and her parents were followers of York. So that's all she knew. She told her story of how she was raised separate from her parents and basically laid out how everything worked. And then she detailed how York molested her starting when she was 14. And then how it evolved from Bushwick, from Brooklyn, and then he moved her to Sullivan County, and then eventually down to Macon. And she provided details of all the other children that he had molested.
Before she came in, were you aware of the allegations of child sexual abuse? Or were you looking at him for other things, other illegal and criminal activities that the sheriff had told you about?
Jelaine, I'm going to leave that to you because this was my first exposure.
I wouldn't say early on, but there was a point when we had received some allegations or someone had said that they were, I think the sheriff actually had learned that too through different individuals coming into the hospitals, having the babies, and different like cooperating witnesses that he had that would tell him that there were allegations of sexual molestation. We did suspect that, but with that said, we were never able to, until Habiba came in, we were never able to talk to someone who had direct knowledge. We went to Memphis, Tennessee. We did some interviews with some former followers up there, and they had heard that was going on there. They saw girls going into his room and young girls talking about his private parts and things like that was in the interview, but nobody experienced anything firsthand, and they couldn't tell us who to go talk to from there. So it was some allegations of it, not early on, but as we kind of dealt with other matters with that group, started to surface, but it didn't come forward where we actually were able to corroborate all these witnesses that told their story and kind of realized that it was obviously not only going on, but it had gone on for years. And the acts that were done to these children was just horrific. He chose male and female victims. He chose different ages. You know, he's often referred to as a pedophile. Ken Lanning would say, when Ken and I talked about this, he's really more of just an indiscriminate sexual predator. His love that he professed for the children was fake, kind of fake presentation, and he just chose victims based on their eyes, their rear end, how they walked, whatever he chose. He would tell the women that were following him already and had sexual relations for years, he would just tell them to bring that child to him. And of course, from there, it just went. Some of the women didn't want to and didn't have any choice because of the whole dynamics of the living. They had no place to go. Their parents were there. There were all kinds of reasons that they would end up agreeing to his requests. He would have the children come to him daily and multiple times daily in groups. And there was typically a lot of oral sex, but it was typically in a group, 2 to 3 and 4 women at a time and girls at a time, or boys 2 boys at a time, things like that. It was, I think it was unusual for him to have just one partner with him during a sex act.
When Habiba came in, she definitely provided evidence of that.
We only had allegations of it. We never had another witness tell us that they were molested until Habiba came in. Habiba was the first witness.
Yes, and Jerry, she had a really good memory. When she first came in that first day, she was kind of shy and reserved. And then she provided enough information for us to go, okay, we need to look at this. And so I went back and we sat down and I did a detailed interview. We sat down, she went over her whole life. She, of course, remembered all her friends and everything that happened. And we did a detailed 302 of everything that happened. I have an excerpt if you want me to read it to you. I think having her own words.
Yes, that'd be fantastic.
Here's an example of the details that came out. This is just an excerpt. Once, I'm going to call her W, moved to Sullivan County, York continued to have anal and oral sex with her. York had a trailer where he had sex with W and the other girls. Sex with York became more frequent and York became more open about having sex with the girls. It became an orgy-like atmosphere in the trailer as York had sex with the girls in front of each other. W saw York having sex with N, C, and C. York also began having sex with other girls who were 14 or 15 who had moved to Sullivan County from one of York's communities. These girls were S, E, and E. W saw York having sex with these girls as well. When W was approximately 15 years old and still living in Sullivan County, York told her to get A and bring her to him in his trailer. York told W that A was having problems and needed extra attention. W brought A to York's trailer. York talked to A about sex. York told W to talk to A and tell her that it was okay to have sex with York and that it was part of a Sudanese culture. Shortly after York had his first meeting with A, York told W to bring A to his trailer again, which he did. York put in a pornographic tape and told W to perform oral sex on him in front of A. He told A to watch what W did and do what she did. W placed A's hand on York's penis. A performed oral sex on York. A was 8 years old at the time. Around the same time that York began molesting A, York told W to bring K to him in his trailer, which he did. York put K on his lap and began touching her. York told W to perform oral sex on him in front of K, which he did. K was about 4 years old at the time. W saw K perform oral sex on York. We had very specific, detailed 302s of this. We had all that detail in all those names. Most of these girls had left the compound, so we were able to locate them, mostly in Atlanta. I spent weeks, months getting to know them and talking to them, and had similar interviews and 302s where they provided very graphic details about what happened to them and who they witnessed being molested as well. When you put that together, and we gave it to the new AUSA, which Jelaine would know more about, and our SAC, and it was, we got to do something. We can't just let this go. When you consider they also provided specific details of at least 5 minors, victims who were still on the compound, who they know were being molested because they were there and saw it happening. They had firsthand knowledge that these 5 kids were still on the compound and most likely still being molested. So it adds some urgency.
Initially, when you're first learning about these child victims, whether they had left the compound or they were still on the compound, but when you were getting ready to put together charges, how many people were you aware of at that time? And then after you actually executed search warrants, how large did your victim population get to be?
I mean, there's more that were mentioned kind of like during the interviews of other people. But as far as who we interviewed and talked about their own molestation, there's at least like 21, 22 victims. We have like 40 interviews in a notebook, some of which are male interviews where they talk about their involvement with York as well. But there's about 20, I counted them, there was probably like 21 victims that we interviewed and identified that were prepared to testify at the trial. There's so many more victims because they were molested in Athens. A lot of this went on from New York. A lot of the followers that were there that were supporting York, some of them were female victims that had been molested when they were children back in New York. I would say there's, like I said, 21 that were prepared to testify, but there's many, many more victims than that.
And as far as the interstate transportation, we have specific detailed interviews by the victims who say, we were in New York, and then when York moved to Eatonton, he called up to New York and he decided who was coming down. He was molesting the kids there, and he's like, I want them to come down here. And then he continued to molest them in Georgia. And there are a few trips to Disney World where he took his victims there as well.
Those trips kind of gave us the teeth of the indictment in terms of the sexual exploitation. I mean, they were a good half of it, I should say. The other half was when they're transported from New York to Georgia, but also when they're transported interstate to Florida. That gave additional sexual exploitation of children charge accounts for us because they were transported. And, we used what they call the One Man Act, MANN Act. It's an old name for a statute that for transporting children across the state lines for sexual purposes. That's when the case kind of got the name One Man Act because of that, because obviously it's the statute we used and he was the lone offender.
As far as his cult is concerned, was he the only one that was molesting children? I mean, did he have restrictions where others couldn't do what he was doing?
I would say that the ones he selected to molest were his victims. To my knowledge, in our investigation, he never had other men participate in those acts with him or was knowledgeable of them taking any of these girls to their trailers, etc., to molest them. It was just him.
Based on these interviews that you've done, you take it to the U.S. attorney and it's decided that you're going to proceed and charge him. I could imagine that arranging that search and arrest operation had to be a pretty big deal for the Macon, Georgia RA.
Yep, it was about 9 of us at the time. We did the affidavit in the Middle District of Georgia for the search. We did the indictment first and then the search. We presented the affidavit to Max Wood, the U.S. attorney here, and then there was a U.S. attorney from Washington, D.C. Her name was Stephanie Thacker. And then Richard Moultrie was the assistant U.S. attorney in Macon. And there were others, Sharon Ratley. There were several others. I kind of had a list of tributes toward the end, but there's so many people involved in putting this case together and getting us to the point to even be able to do the search and the arrest. It wouldn't be possible without numerous resources. I think one thing we could talk about a little bit was their living conditions. I think I mentioned earlier that they were separated in various buildings and trailers on the property. It was, I want to say, 65, Joan, or 66 buildings that were identified and numbered for the search. And of course, the multiple divisions of the property to execute the search. And there were trailers, and in his house, there was a barn where a lot of men stayed. There was a nicer house next to his home where the women he molested stayed. And of course, his house, it was large and I guess somewhat luxurious to some of the residents there, but it certainly wasn't well kept up and clean and things like that. A lot of the buildings when we searched were trashed, trashy looking on the inside. Again, like I said, they separated everybody. And there was a building called 103 that if the girls didn't comply with his request for sexual purposes, then they had to go live in building 103 and they ate rice and beans. And they were shunned from the rest of their friends, just not accepted into the mainstream of activities. And they certainly weren't escorted out to dinner or to Walmart to buy a diamond ring and all the things that he did to the girls and boys that accommodated him sexually. So that's kind of how the building was massive. They had armed guards outside the gate. We encountered them one time to try to drive through when I had some visitors from Quantico. I had the hostage rescue team and the negotiators and profilers and things, and we tried to go in to look around, and we didn't get past the one circle around the main pyramid that they would allow us to drive in.
So you've decided to do this search. You're going into a cult compound. You mentioned people being concerned about Waco and Ruby Ridge. Were you concerned about the possibilities that this could go really wrong? And what did you do to prepare for that?
Yes, absolutely concerned about that. We certainly didn't want to have any kind of a situation similar to those other incidents. And for that reason alone, we knew that we had to come up with a plan to arrest him off of the compound, which turned out to be kind of almost an adventure in and of itself, because when we set up a command post nearby and when we thought that he was going to move, he moved a lot earlier off the compound, so we didn't even have the phones plugged in yet. And Joan and I were throwing our gear into the trunk of the vehicle to race out to where he was headed. He left the compound with 2 or 3 females in a vehicle. We definitely planned to arrest him outside. There was so much that went in and so many individuals that contributed to the success of the search warrant that you couldn't even begin to name them. But I know when we wrote the affidavit, or that the affidavit was presented to headquarters, because as you know, Jerry, this had to be approved by headquarters and the president basically before we could go in on something like this. Ted Jackson was the SAC, Fred Snellings was the ASAC, Howard Hatfield was in there too. But those 2 guys, I remember talking to headquarters, I was standing outside their office. They were quote unquote battling with headquarters to get approval for us to go in. And we felt like we had every I dotted and every T crossed. The sheriff's department had established a perimeter of about 300 officers. And we had 5 different regional SWAT teams there and all the other resources, the computer analysis, evidence response, interview teams, and things like that. The planning that went into that was massive, absolutely. I wouldn't even begin to try to name all the team leaders and the supervisors that made it come together. You know, we had planned and allowing him to leave. And then we also made a plan for what to do when we got on the compound with the followers that might be there, because we were getting close to Savior's Day. There were followers coming in. There was actually more on the compound than we initially thought there was going to be. And then we knew we were going to have children. We knew we were going to have other children. And we knew we had to identify everyone on the compound. So we had a huge team set up to fingerprint everyone because of York giving them fictitious names and the fact that they were using false names oftentimes. And we planned for that. And we're going to try to identify everyone there.
And we did get lucky, because we were prepared. The plan was we're not going in there to arrest him. We'll have to wait till he leaves. We had 300 people ready to go with the SWAT teams and the search teams, all the teams. So we had a lot of people on standby, and we were prepared to sit for several days. And it just so happened within an hour or 2, he came out. The SOG was on him, and the SWAT team was prepared to make the arrest. So once he entered a shopping center there, I think he was going to the grocery store, they made the arrest. The SWAT teams entered the compound and cleared it relatively quickly, separated the men and the women and children into, I think it was the temple.
We've seen authorities going in and out of those 2 pyramids as well. Some of the Nuwaubian Nation remain on the grounds. Authorities, SWAT teams and officers are sitting next to them as they sit on the ground over here near the shade. They have sat there for the whole hour and a half that we have been on scene, being watched by those FBI agents you see at the top of your screen. Authorities have also, in the last half hour or so, lined this compound with squad cars. Local authorities are also on the scene. As we pan out here, every few feet, there is what appears to us to be Putnam County Sheriff's officers with squad cars just lining the area. Highway 142 is shut down. They have brought in lights. The authority, the FBI, has to flood this compound with lights, as it appears they're going to be serving these warrants for quite some time.
And it went really smooth after that. It was a huge relief.
We put mothers and their children, Joan, you can help me out here, but we had a large building. I don't even remember what building it was exactly without looking at the layout, I guess. But we had a large building that was somewhat of like an auditorium or conference area. We put all the children in there with their mothers, if they so choose, and then had all kinds of resources for them to occupy their time, toys, games, food. The supervisor, again, Fred Snelling, spoke to them as a group to kind of keep them calm. We put everything in place that was, to me, was just all intended on a efficient and peaceful raid. We had 5 computer analysis teams. We had defects there to deal with. We had 5 victims that were on the property and needed to be interviewed. We had numerous interview teams set up, and on and on and on. It just was that kind of massive enterprise or massive operation, I should say. But we did have help early on from behavioral analysis and hostage negotiators. sat around the conference tables many times and talked about who are we dealing with here. I think that was measurable contribution as well, because when you have a leader like that, you're trying to answer the questions: is he insane? Is he in touch with reality? Is he just antisocial? What kind of person here, in case things would go awry or he would do something crazy and take hostage or whatever, that we were prepared from that aspect. So we did that, and we certainly learned a lot about him and his personality assessment, which prepared us for that. And then the negotiators were on standby. They were at the scene in the event of any crisis that way. And to be honest, the men on the compound were unpredictable as well. We didn't wait till all of them were off or anything like that, but those men have been told by York to protect him at all costs. We weren't sure how far they would go either when they learned that we had their leader, et cetera, in custody. We did all that preparation for something like that. And in the end, Ken Lanning testified at the trial to the grooming process and the whole sexual exploitation. He's an incredible expert. And Jennifer Aiken, you might know her as well, but her information regarding predators was used in the affidavit for the warrant. And the next day in the paper, it came out that the FBI carried out a flawless raid, or was carried out flawlessly or something like that. We were thankful for that. I think it could have turned either way. We felt definitely lucky to have it turn out the way it did.
Well, you mentioned the name Ken Lanning, and I've spoken with him, and he's definitely an expert on child sexual abuse. So this flawless raid, what did you find during the search?
Well, that's a bit of a story too, and Joan can jump in here anytime, but in short, we found items to corroborate what their testimony was, and that was absolutely essential for the trial. For example, they said York maintained a journal, and they would tell us where it was in a notebook and things like that, a journal of his children and his wives. So we found that. They would tell us there's guns and where there's guns at and things, and we found the guns, we found the cash. I think an interesting item we found was that one of our male victims tells us about a pink panther, a stuffed pink panther with a penis attached to it. And it was in the room, and he was allowed to play with it or touch it or whatever prior to sexual activity with York. He knew it was there, and he told us about that. We found that. We found the pink panther.
How old was that victim?
When it started, oh boy, I'd have to look at his interview. He was young. Do you remember?
Probably 10.
10, yeah. John and I interviewed him, but he was, molested repeatedly after that, and then had brought another male victim as well. There were a few. And we found, of course, the cash, the silver suitcase that the cash was allegedly in, and that was obviously helpful.
How much cash?
In that suitcase, I want to say it was $500,000, right, Joan?
Yeah, about 400,000.
Yeah, of course, that was forfeited. And so that was good. And then we found letters from his followers. We found pornography, and we found some videos. We did not find what you would consider child pornography. And there's, you can speculate on why that might be, but I think he had victims available to him and access to him every day. He didn't need to have the collection. We found some of the sex paraphernalia, and I think a big thing we found too is so many of the victims told us that the sexual acts going up a spiral staircase into his bedroom and then on a large oversized animal print pillow, and that pillow was obviously taken from the scene, and we took pictures of the stairwell, the spiral stairwell, and the stairwell had a name on it that says, "Do not go upstairs." So many victims told us about that was said. And again, that all helps to tell the jury that they were there, that they're telling the truth and not York. And the animal print pillow, we sent that to the lab. The lab report came back, and it was too much DNA on it to even begin to separate and identify whose it was.
And that's absolutely horrific and sad.
Terrible. It's absolutely terrible, yeah.
We got on at about 2 p.m. and then at around 10 or 11 at night, one of our witnesses called me and let us know that there was a group of his followers forming at one of the parking areas in a mall close by, and that they were planning to storm the compound. And once we got that information, management decided we need to pull the plug. So at about that time, we wrapped it up and took everything out. I do remember one thing we didn't think about was bringing lights. So it was extremely dark at that point. And there was no outdoor lighting, and there was very little lighting in the buildings for the teams to work. So we wrapped it up at about 11 o'clock that night.
the men and women that were on the compound were temporarily detained.
Correct.
Everyone was contained until the search was over.
Now, I do remember that we knew, based on our extensive interviews with the witnesses, so we knew exactly who lived there, where they lived. At one point, I knew every single building, what was in it on that compound, had it all written out. We anticipated like 40 people, I think, men, women, and children, but there was over 100 because they were there preparing for his birthday party. The Savior's Day was what he called it. So there's way more people than we anticipated.
Based on all of this evidence that you've found during the search, I take it that you were able to put together some really strong charges, because I think I read that he decided to plead guilty.
Right. And that's where things get crazy in this case as well, because we had a real good indictment, and one of the federal judges accepted a plea for 15 years. Of course, it would have been federal time, 15 years in prison. Joan and I, we had nothing to do with, obviously, those negotiations. To be honest, the U.S. attorneys that worked hard on this case, they had a lot of mixed feelings about the plea as well. But with that said, some of the things you consider, I know Joan and I talked about this, I remember right after we learned of it, is with a plea, you don't subject your witnesses to this grueling testimony and to have to relive this again, because they were giving testimony on a state level as well, a state grand jury, a state trial. So this would have prevented that. And also, I think the other thing is, for those of us that are experienced with these type of cases and crimes against children, unfortunately, you don't ever know what your witness is going to say, when they take the stand, how they're going to do it, if they're going to even make it to the stand, to be honest, with such sensitive testimony. You don't know if they're going to be believable. I think we had intelligent victims and that they were articulate and had, like Joan mentioned, excellent memories, and obviously they did well. But again, it's all the things you think about. And so then we were like, okay, so 15 years. He was an older guy, about 56. Well, needless to say, that judge recused himself from the case, and the new judge, Judge Ashley Royal, said, we're going to go to trial. It was Judge Hughes, I think, rejected the plea, and then Judge Royal was assigned to the case and went to trial. That kind of took a crazy twist, too.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that. The newspaper article that I'm looking at that says that he pled guilty to federal charges and gets 15 years, that was rescinded?
That's right. That was rejected by the judge.
He rejected it because he didn't think the sentence was long enough.
Absolutely. And I will give credit to our probation office, because that probation agent that wrote up the sentencing report wrote it up. Obviously, she was not happy with the idea of pleading to 15 years as well. It was a 3-week trial in Brunswick, Georgia, and he was convicted, and he was sentenced to 135 years in prison.
Well, that's a big difference between 15 years and 135 years.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
In between that, when he, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jelaine, my memory's kind of faulty on it, but after the plea was rejected, Richard, the AUSA, Richard Moultrie and Stephanie Thacker decided, well, let's add the financial crimes aspect of it, the structuring charge, and then add the forfeiture of the land to the indictment, which we did. So we brought in the IRS to help with the structuring charge, which basically had several of the ladies who worked in his office described how he would give them cash in increments less than $10,000, and they would run around several days of the month and deposit money into the accounts.
Yeah, I was thinking that was in right from the start. But IRS definitely did a great job. They put that structuring charges together, and obviously the interviews that we did produced the testimony that the structuring was going on, and the tellers at the bank cooperated, and that had a big, big impact.
That's a pretty easy case. You just get the bank statements and you can see the deposits, and you have the women who testify that he told them to do it.
In addition to federal charges, was he also charged with the state, and did he get any additional time on state charges?
Yes, he did. He was charged on a state level. He pled guilty to state charges, and Kathy Johnson pled guilty. They charged several others with kind of more minor charges, but they did charge some of the whites that had been bringing in the victims.
What did the state charge him with?
It's all basically the sexual exploitation of children type charges on a state level. There were a number of them.
Just to kind of sum up this case, which was just wild and had so many complex stories and twists and turns in it, how would you sum this case up in both of your careers? Where does it place?
Joan, you want to speak to that?
Sure. It was the first case I'd worked involving children, and it was extremely difficult and time-consuming. I was pregnant and just had a baby, but it was also very rewarding. After this case was over, I ended up working on the Crimes Against Children Squad, the Innocent Images Squad, for several years.
And Jelaine?
Yeah, I, on the other hand, have worked numerous cases involving crimes against children, but nothing like that. Some of the dynamics are the same and have been to trial on a couple of them. But this case just took so many, obviously it was massive. It was involved so many resources to make it successful. I mean, the trial was horrendous. You know, with 3 weeks of being out of town, Joan and I stayed in St. Simon's Island or something like that during the trial. It just took, like you say, a lot of twists and turns. He changed attorneys a couple times. But when people ask me what cases had an impact, obviously there's many, but this is definitely, I guess, the second one I mentioned. It just never went away either. It never went away to the day I retired.
And what do you mean by that? It never went away?
Because there was continued to be threats when he was in jail, and threats against the judge, threats against the sheriff. The Nuwaubians were placing liens on the judge's property. Things would surface. So really the case just kind of stayed with you right until the end.
Are you aware if the Nuwaubian Nation, quote unquote, cult continued even after Dwight York left the compound and was sent off to prison?
Yes, they continue in small groups and kind of spread out in the Atlanta, still in the Athens area, still in Milledgeville, Georgia. I believe there's even some following in Macon, Georgia. York gets visitors in prison from Nuwaubian followers. I would say it's scattered, it's nothing organized, and I don't believe that any of the male leaders that have tried to take over, they don't come close to the characteristics like Dwight York had. They don't come close to being able to have that influence over the followers.
Speaking on Brother Polight, so my name often go by as Nisut Amore Senatumre, which is my preference. I'd rather be called Nisut Amore Senatumre. You know, the master teacher, Reverend Dr. Malachi Kobina York, gave me the name, as well as name my family, name my daughter since birth. He's my spiritual master and guide. He's my father. You understand? He's my God. He's my deity, however y'all want to call it. He's the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing.
I can't see what you're seeing. I can't see I know what happened to me. I know what he did. I know what kind of person he is. You know what I'm saying? So
what kind of person he is? That's a question I want to ask you. What kind of person is Dr.
I mean, you get what you see. You get what you see.
Tell me,
but
who is he to you?
What people didn't see is also
I asked about other people. I want to know about you personally. I want to get into your mind. I want to know, what is he to you? Who is he to you?
Who he is to me? Right now, he's somebody that did a lot of things great, but had his flaws, and it didn't correct those flaws. And he had years and years and years to correct those flaws. He didn't correct those flaws. Now I came back, and now he's incarcerated. Should he be in this? Should he be out? Someone
yes
like him shouldn't be incarcerated if they uplifted the community and doing what he did. But if you're gonna do that, and on top of that, still do the wrong thing for years and years and years, then you definitely shouldn't be out on the streets. That's if I was the devil, the perfect devil is the one who's gonna be a pastor, a preacher, or the one doing the right thing, and actually the one doing the wrong thing and send you to hell. That's the perfect devil right there. If I was the devil right now, I'd be telling you to do the right thing. I'd be telling you to live your life this way, and I'll be sending you right to hell. The devil knows the gospel as well as any pastor or preacher. So if the devil is gonna do his job, what better way to do it than to have everybody lifting themselves or doing the right thing, and in actuality, it's like they're going up, but they're going this way. It's not just up. It's like they're going up and they're going astray. You know what I'm saying? That's the only really way that the devil could do his job, is to deceive people into thinking that he's actually God, to deceive people into thinking that he's actually Christ. That's why they say you will have false prophets and false messiahs. I would respect a wolf. If I was a sheep, I would respect a wolf that approached me and tried to hunt me down than a wolf that came in sheep clothing.
My whole argument in this whole situation is, should people be locked up based on what people believe? I got the right to be angry. You know why? Because the Lord promises me something different. The Lord promises me that we will lock people up beyond a shadow of a doubt. That's what the Lord promises me.
But in this case, it was up to 12 people to have that reasonable doubt or not. And those 12 people make the decision.
It's not. So what's the point?
If you want to fight for
it's your matter of opinion if you would have
fight for it for another reason. Don't fight for it because he's innocent of a molesting kid.
Let's say he molested 1,000 children. Factually.
Okay.
Genetic evidence and everything. Things that we don't deny. Scientifically, we say, wow, okay, true. If someone was to ask me, would you still worship him as your Most High, acknowledge him as your Most High God? I would have to.
Let's say he molested 1,000 children. Factually.
Okay.
Genetic evidence and everything. Things that we don't deny. Scientifically, we say, wow, okay, true. If someone was to ask me, would you still worship him as your Most High, acknowledge him as your Most High God? I would have to.
Let's say he molested 1,000 children. Factually. Okay. Genetic evidence and everything. Things that we don't deny. Scientifically, we say, wow, okay, true. If someone was to ask me, would you still worship him as your Most High, acknowledge him as your Most High God? I would have to.
Let me ask you a question. You keep saying that Dr. York went up in court and admitted that he was guilty. Am I correct?
He copped out. He didn't go to trial, he copped out.
Did you see the video?
Did I see the video? I seen a few videos with him in court. What that mean? He got drugged?
What did he cop out to, Poppy?
He copped out to all of those charges. The charges, not tax evasion, not that. Like Prince York tried to say, he copped out to all of those charges of molestation, and the reason why he copped out was because he gave those children herpes.
Now, hold on. Now, what did he cop out to, though? What was the charges for him copping out?
Child molestation or...
No. What was the time? What was the time that he will get if he cop out?
The time that they gave him over 100 years.
Now, Poppy, reason with me. Let's deal with some real truth for a minute. If a man would cop out to 200 years or to 100 years, come on, Poppy, it don't make sense. He have nothing to lose. Why would he cop out to 100 years, Poppy? He would automatically, hold on, Poppy. He would go to trial. When you look at the case, you will see that Dr. York is definitely not in his right state of mind, brother. Come on, man. When you look at the case, you will see that Dr. York is definitely not in his right state of mind, brother. Come on, man. See, but y'all hate so damn much. Hold on, Poppy, hold on. Y'all hate so much, and you want to prove that he's that y'all going along everything what the damn white man told you. If the white man is the fucking devil, how come everybody all of a sudden now believes what the fucking white man is telling them? Come on, bro.
So, Saneter, let me ask you a question. You gonna tell me, just like Ben Potter, that there was rumors in New York?
Brother, we talking about Dr. York right now. Let's get back to Dr. York.
So now, hold up, yes. So now you gonna tell me that the Brooklyn Knights didn't run Dr. York ass out of Brooklyn because the rumors of him being a child molester been going on for over 40 years? This shit didn't just start with Dr. York. Dr. York was being accused of being a child molester since the early 70s, 60s and 70s. That man had been being a child molester, number one. Number two, not only is he a child molester, but he taught Africa Bambaataa. He is Africa Bambaataa's teacher, and he taught them about the occult. He is his teacher. He is Bambaataa's master teacher, and that's another place where Bambaataa started that practice from. He recorded his first record inside Dr. York's studio. Dr. York turned Africa Bambaataa out. He's a pedophile.
All right, I hear what you're saying, brother, but guess what? You still have not proven anything. Give me some proof. Show me something. Ain't no man, for example, I'm going to court. I'm not going to cop out to 100 damn years, Poppy. What do I got to lose in going to trial? I'm already in court. I'm 50-something years old already. I'm 40-something years old already, and I'm going to court for 100 years. Why would that man cop out? You know why he copped out, Poppy?
I know why he copped out.
Why he copped out?
He copped out because he didn't want his medical records to be released and lose all his followers, because his medical records told the story of him giving them children. He gave all of those children herpes.
All right, Poppy. He copped out, my brother, because he wanted to release his wives. The fucking white man had all of his wives and everybody locked down in the dungeons. So he said, I'm gonna take the fall. And you can see he was already drugged up, Poppy. He was drugged up. And you can see he was already drugged up, Poppy. He was drugged up. No man is gonna go inside the shit and go and say, I'm gonna cop out to 100 years. Who does that? You might as well go to trial. You think Dr. York was that stupid, Poppy? Something else was bigger than that. Come on, man. I don't believe, and hold on, I don't believe that Dr. York was molesting little boys. How old was Tyreek? Tyreek was what? He said he was what? 7 years old? I don't believe that.
Yep.
Now, I have a right to my own opinion. I don't believe that. I don't believe he was having sex with little boys. Dr. York had 50 beautiful fucking wives, women. I don't believe that. He did not go to jail for molesting. He did not get sentenced for molesting and child abuse. He did not go to jail for molesting. He did not get sentenced for molesting and child abuse.
You understand you're charged with 40 counts of aggravated child molestation, that you could receive a maximum sentence of 30 years in confinement for each count, that you're charged with 34 counts of child molestation, that you could receive a maximum sentence of 20 years in confinement for each count, that you're charged with 1 count of sexual exploitation of children, and you could receive a maximum sentence of 20 years in confinement, and you're charged with 2 counts of influencing witnesses, and you could receive a maximum sentence of 10 years in confinement for each count, and that you could receive a minimum sentence overall of 10 years on probation. I'm telling you the most and the least. Do you understand that? Actually, Your Honor,
that's where y'all all got it wrong. He didn't go to jail for that. He didn't go to jail for molesting, brother. He didn't go to jail for molesting, brother. He went to jail for a whole different other shit. He went to jail for a whole different other shit.
So if he didn't go to jail for molesting, then why was those children on the stand testifying on the stand and got their testimony? And anybody, all you got to do is take the course for the records. They testified and said everything he did to them in the bedroom. So if they wasn't in court for justice for what he did to them, then why would the district attorney even have them on the stand? That doesn't make any sense.
Poppy, do you believe in the white man now? All of a sudden, you believe in the white man?
Do I believe in the white man?
Yeah.
Did dogs fly?
All right, so you don't believe in the white man. So why do you believe the white man now, brother? Why you believe in him now?
Here's the thing, Si. I'm not one of those Negroes that's going to sit up there and act like 1 out of 3 females is not being molested. 1 out of 6 young men is not being molested. We know we got rapists in our community. We know that. We know the black man. When we walk the street, we hate each other. We know people go to jail for rape. Let's stop acting like black people don't commit black on black crime. Let's not act like we all don't have an uncle or a grandfather that done molested all of the children in the family. Like, let's stop pretending that the white man is making up the stats and that black man don't do no wrong.
All right, my brother. See, now let me talk to my people. Y'all keep saying, Saul, you wrong. Saul, you fucked up on this one. Y'all don't understand. Saul, you wrong. Y'all think Saul never don't know these things. Y'all are dealing with slow gases. Y'all niggas are really dumb. Some of you are stupid. And the reason I gotta come out like that is because y'all all in here, Saul, you wrong. Saul, oh, how can you do that? So the really stupid motherfuckers is you. And y'all niggas are stupid in the chat room. God damn, I've been here for 20 damn years, man. You think I don't know what's going on? Come on, man, sit your ass down. Let me and Poppy deal with this shit. Sit your ass down and enjoy this damn conversation. Damn, y'all niggas is weak. Damn, y'all niggas is slow. Y'all niggas are slow, man. God damn. So go ahead, Poppy. If I was to have sex with a 9-year-old, would you say that I am a molester?
Tariq got a question.
Yeah, peace. Hello?
Peace.
We can hear you fine, Tariq.
All right. Peace to the panel. Peace, Saneter. I just want to ask a question about the interview that you had with Dr. Reggie when he interviewed you, and you was talking about the Poppy situation. My question is, because you mentioned my case and my story, and that how you have alleged on it because, you said that you didn't know, you don't believe me. So
I said I don't believe you.
Well, you alluded to you don't know for sure. That's why you put alleged.
Did you hear me say I don't believe you, brother Tariq?
Tariq, you still there?
Oh, sorry, I thought I was on mute.
Did I say Did I say that I don't believe you? I said that.
What do you remember what you said?
I'm asking you. You question it. You asking me the question.
You may not have used that particular word. You said you alluded to the fact that you didn't know for sure, so you put alleged on there. And you're not wrong for that.
Well, let me answer the question. No, I'm not wrong for that. I was not there. I didn't see it go down. I'm not one to just take people's word for it. All right? Even if Dr. York was here, I'm not taking his word for it. I said alleged because I don't know if it's true or false. I don't know. But I'm not going to say you're a liar or you wrong. No, I would just say I don't know.
I understand that.
I would say I don't know. But guess what? I will give you the platform to tell your story to the masses of the people. That don't mean I got to believe in all of that. You see? I would simply say I don't know if it's true or false. I was not there. See, I'm not like a lot of, and excuse me, ladies, but I'm not like a lot of the dick riders that be on here and go for everything that people say. I don't do that. I sit back and I listen to the story, and I let the other person, it's up to y'all whether y'all want to believe it or not. But I'm not the one to go for everything and listen to what everybody says.
Yeah, but typically in situations like this, a big profile case where something like this happened, there's normally nobody that comes up or reachable that you can talk to and try to find out for themselves. You're not able to reach the Michael Jackson victims or a certain high profile case. So for this situation, when you are able to reach a victim and talk to a victim, you get their side of the story, and I this is not something comfortable for me to do or come out and say, but I'm doing it for a greater cause for the people and because the Nuwabians and the son came out and he was saying that his father was innocent on your platform, and people watch your platform. So to me, that's not the truth in reality. So I have to come and correct that and tell the truth.
His father was innocent. I brought the other side up where you condemned it, and you said, now I would say the same thing to Prince York. I don't know if your father's innocent or not. I'm not going to say, oh yeah, he's innocent. See, I would do the same thing. I would do the same thing.
I'm just all right. Well, just look at this. Polight, you basically made Polight. Polight is studied under Malachi York. He called himself the son of Malachi York. Prince York is was on your channel a lot, and he's a mainstay somewhat. That's the son of Malachi York. There's a lot of ex-Nuwabians that's through the House of Consciousness, so on and so forth. So it's a part of the community. It's a part of what's going on in reality, and there's the truth, and nobody seems to want to actually get to the truth. It shouldn't matter putting one side or the other side. It's let's look at what's going on. They have a group of people saying that a black leader was framed and was railroaded, and then you have victims saying that this is true and this is what happened. So let's get to the answers and to the bottom of that, because you might just be the media, but I have to live with it, and it puts the victims' lives in a certain kind of jeopardy, because you have somebody saying that he's innocent and it was framed. And we all have mutual friends or whatever the case might be, but they thinking that we out here lying, and people moved on with their life. Last week, let me say this to you. Let it finish up real quick. Last week, one of the victims in an unrelated situation passed away. In a carjacking, got shot in the head. She had 3 kids, and she had a master's degree, but she grew up in the land just like all of us, and she was also a child molested victim. So it's like, so like to me, it's real. Like her story will never be told again because she's not here no more. You know what I'm saying? And people are talking about, going around the issue and stuff like that. So it just like when things are done like that, it puts us in a position, because we're out here telling the truth. So it puts us in a fragile position because we don't have the people, looking to find the truth. It's like, it still makes it look like a conspiracy and so on and so forth. And I think, like there's so much information out there. It should have been already addressed. He pled guilty. There's a lot, there's transcript, there's all this information that's out there. And then you got people like Polight and Prince York and other NOAKians, and I don't hate NOAKians, but they are telling people, they're giving people a lie, and we're affected by it because this is our life, you know what I'm saying, and we go through this. Like, you guys don't have to deal with what we went through. Like, we got to walk that walk, and you know what I'm saying. Like, if there's nobody out here putting the truth out here. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to do it. I have sisters that's been molested, 2 of my sisters. I have friends that I grew up with that all went through the same stuff. You know what I'm saying? So I got to speak out for everybody besides myself. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
All right, brother Tariq. You are always welcome, brother. I never close my doors on you. You can come on anytime you want to speak. It's up to you to call me and say, brother, I got something on my heart. I need to get it down. Just like when the last time we did, what'd I do? I said, yo, brother, let's go. Come on out about 12 o'clock. Let's go to the restaurant, sit down and eat. We went into a restaurant, brother. We had a good time, and you told your story. Now, I brought your story to the world. That's my job. To me, that is my job. It is not my job to rally behind you and say, yeah, he did it. No, my job is to put your story before the world. And that's what I'm continuing to do. And I don't have no problem with interviewing you again and letting you come out with more and more information. That's up to you, brother. Whenever you want to get on here, you got my number. Call your brother and say, sir, I need to get this out. It's something heavily on my chest. I need to put it on your platform. And of course, the door is always open to you, my brother.
Yeah, but I'm more like on a personal level, man, because you call me your brother and you're my brother, I'm your brother, and I come to you and I tell you what I've been through, and that's the truth, and you can accept that or you cannot accept that, but like that's what it is. Like, if you want to be my brother,
you have to understand. I'm the media, brother. You don't see you can go to the news and tell them, yo, I did this or that, and I did that, and they're gonna say, oh yeah, matter of fact, yeah, this is what he did. He did this, and you don't do that in media, my brother. You understand what I'm saying to you?
Well, so
just like with the body situation, I have now learned to say
let's stick with York though. York is a confirmed case. He is certified, verified. They got medical documents to back that shit up. He under the jail. He ain't in a jail cell. He in a jail cell under the jail.
Sister, there you go again. We speak on things we don't know. I checked it out. He is not in jail for molesting. That's not what he's in jail for.
Not only what he's in jail for. He's
not in jail.
He didn't get convicted of that.
That's not what he's in jail for. He's not in jail for that.
He's in jail for trafficking minors across state lines. For the
Tariq, is he in jail for molesting people, brother?
He pled guilty to state court for child molestation.
Is Dr. York
got multiple
child molestation?
Hold on, let me answer the question. Saneter. It happened in 2 stages. It was the guilty plea. He pled guilty to state for child molestation. He pled guilty to federal for racketeering and all that, RICO and all that stuff. The federal got rejected. Whatever happened, it ended up going to court, and the court only dealt with most of the federal stuff. And
that's
okay, but hold on. Now there were charges dealing with child molestation, but it wasn't worded as child molestation because they don't have.
I told you, trafficking minors across state lines for sexual purposes.
No.
Yeah. So now the reason hold on, real quick. If you go look up. The guilty plea is still standing on the state level. It's never been taken back. You can look up his guilty plea. It's still standing. He went to court for federal charges, not for the state charges. The state charges dealt with all the child molestation counts, or at least the majority of them.
Tariq, let me ask you one question. Is Dr. York doing time because of child molestation? Yes or no?
Yes, and I would answer that because he's doing time for child molestation, racketeering, trafficking. It's all multiple counts. It's not one count. It's not one count.
And then the people show you different through the records. Come on, brother. You got to keep it real, brother.
Okay, so Saneter, I went to court to testify and told my story about being molested as a child. And what was the reason for that? Why did I go to testify that if he didn't get arrested for that and
Brother,
tried
I
for
have no idea about why would you do it.
Okay,
People do things
he
for
had
their own-
207
for their own
counts.
reasons. I'm not here accusing you. I'm not saying you right or wrong. I'm just telling you my position as the media. I can't come out and say, yes, he did it. Because come on, brother, I can't do that.
Yes, but
the media.
I'm gonna give you the charges right now. I'm not pulling these up off the top of my head. I'm gonna read them to you. Convicted in 2004 of child molestations and violations of the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act. He is serving a 135-year sentence. So he is not only in jail for child molestation, he is also up on RICO charges.
Woo. Okay, and you're reading that from where?
That's from Wikipedia, but I can pull it from several sources if you would like. I just pulled up the first one because it seemed the easiest.
And you're reading it from what? You got to give me the source.
Didn't I just tell you Wikipedia was the first one I pulled up?
Wikipedia?
Yeah, and I can pull up a whole
hold on.
lot more.
Yeah,
With what I just
Saneter,
said.
if we had, Saneter, if I had the best intent in my mind, would I not try to come and tell you the truth?
All right.
If you're my brother, you
Tyreek
understand?
Tyreek just said that no, he didn't been arrested for child molestation because they changed.
No, that's not what I said.
You did so. You said they
No,
didn't
he
use
did.
the word.
No, he didn't. That's what you said.
No, he said that.
He said no. He not
said that
only
he
went to
didn't use
jail
that
for
word, child molestation.
Okay. You want to see it that way? He didn't go for child molestation. Okay, fine. That's your opinion. We have Mr. Morgan on the panel with us tonight. How you doing tonight, Chuck?
Oh, peace and blessings. How are you?
I'm fine. You had a
Okay,
question
good.
you wanted to ask, sir?
Well, it wasn't necessarily a question. It was just something I wanted to just add on to what the brother Tariq was trying to point out in regards to something also that you brought up in reference to what Malachi York was convicted of.
Yes.
And one of the best sources to get the facts on what exactly he was found guilty on, you can, if anyone has access or gets a PACER account, and what that is it gives you access to any and all federal documents, court proceedings, and the results of convictions, etc. So in case 5-02CR00027, you have document 362 filed of November 4th. It's only 3 pages, and it gives a complete list of what York was convicted of. So you have 1, conspiracy to commit racketeering violations, which he received 240 months for. Racketeering acts, 240 months. Conspiracy to transport minors in interstate commerce for unlawful sexual activity. Conspiracy to travel interstate commerce for unlawful sexual activity with minors. And conspiracy to structure cash transactions to evade currency transactions reporting, which will require, which he got 60 months for. So the majority of what Malachi received in the federal conviction was 540 months on counts 4, 5, and 6, because he was found guilty on 11 of 13 counts in the federal. Transporting minors in interstate commerce for unlawful sexual activity, that's where he received the 540 months. Travel with interstate commerce to engage in unlawful sexual activity with minors, he received 180 months. So if we were to go down the list, he received a total of 1,620 months or 135 years. And this was under the Federal Mann Act. And the Mann Act was known once as the White Slavery Trafficking Act. So what the FBI was able to do was, because there's no federal statute on child molestations as a statement or term, they were able to use this Mann Act, which dealt with children, women being used and across state lines for sexual activity. And that's how the government was able to get him on that, because in the state case, of course, he pled guilty to the 200 plus counts, which are not necessarily 200 people, but just the various counts, which consisted of anal sex, it consisted of digital penetration, which is fingering, and so on and so on. So and the total of those counts, York pled guilty. And the only reason he pled guilty was because when his blood work was returned, it found that he had the herpes simplex 2 virus, which several of the victims also had. And it was his legal team who decided in 2002, which he in 2003 pled guilty in both the federal and the state, came up with the talk of having to plead guilty, because having to explain how he has herpes simplex 2 and several of the male victims and female victims having the exact same virus, it would be kind of difficult. So that I just wanted to bring some context to how the government was able to finally convict York in the federal case. And if someone went to my website, newwapianism.com, I do have this all on the site for anyone to see, check, recheck, analyze, scrutinize, or criticize. because it's there, it is accessible, and I only put it up there for the sake of clarity for individuals who want to have the clarity on it. It's under the question, if Dr. York is not convicted on child sex crimes, then what exactly was he convicted of? And the documentation is there for anyone who wants to see it.
Damn. That's the information, man. Shit, that's all we need.
Yeah. But
that's how you do it.
That was all I need. That's all I
Church mouse.
I just wanted to contribute in that. And I thank everyone for at least giving me the opportunity to do that. And I don't know if the brother's still there. Peace to brother Saneter. I never had a chance to speak with you, but
Peace.
I just wanted to say, I'm happy to be able to at least share words with you. I watch you all the time, and I think a lot of what you do has helped a lot of people, at least brings a certain aware or level of consciousness. And it's just another platform where people have an opportunity to see things from various sides. Now, what I would like to say, and this is not necessarily a harsh criticism towards you directly, but I think that in regards to what I deal with Nuwaubianism, period, that is my contribution in this thing, is to set the record straight from various aspects of it. I would think that it would be better or fair to have more of a counter argument to certain individuals that may come on your platform who advocate the Nuwaubian doctrine or speak on York's guilty and or innocence. I've always wanted to share that part with you, at least.
Okay, thank you, brother. I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
I'll definitely take a look at that.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Thank you, Chuck, for coming on and
My
clarifying.
pleasure.
I've been meaning to get in touch with you because we do off and on. We do a cult series over here, and it would be good if we had an actual expert on one of the people that we do be talking about, because we talk about them all down to the moon.
Sure, anytime.
My email is latashapope1981@gmail.com. You can hit me up there. I'll respond back in usually an hour or two.
Sounds good.
If not sooner.
Yes,
But I do thank you for coming on and giving a more thorough than I could, because I know about your site, but I don't know how to navigate it. We'd have been sitting here for 10-15 minutes me trying to go through it to see where the actual information, even though you have questions listed, you got a lot of questions, brother. You got a lot of questions.
Well, I try to put the questions the same way that Malachi York did when he released the book series, 360 Questions Asked a Muslim, Hebrew Israelite, Israeli Church, the Nation of Islam. I just wanted to use it in that same format of a question and then answers, and then we go into the historicity of whatever it is that we're discussing and present the accurate, concrete evidence to support anything, because anything that I'm putting on the site, I cannot have it based on my opinions. It has to be based on the evidence and the primary sources for the people to be able to analyze it and research it so that they'll be able to come to a conclusion on whether or not they would like to accept or reject.
That's always best. Don't just tell somebody something wrong. Show them how it is. So there's more chance that they'll listen to you.
All right. Well, I appreciate everyone, okay? And we all have a wonderful evening.
You as well, Chuck. Thank you.
Peace, bro.
Thanks, Chuck. Peace, bro.
Okay, we're going to wrap this 12:48. We're going to wrap this up. Are there any remaining questions on the panel for Sai concerning Sai? Did he answer your questions adequately and thoroughly?
No, we're talking about guilty or not guilty.
Guilty or not guilty?
Let me ask another one question real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So based on Chuck Morgan's answer, or more clarification on, are you satisfied with what he said?
Yes, I've always been satisfied with a lot of stuff he said. Trust me, brother. I've been listening a lot to Chuck Morgan and a lot to y'all.
But you
I just have a responsibility to do to my people, and that is to try not to get in the way of making my own personal statements. I can't do that as the reporter. I don't know why you can't understand that, brother. It's not up for me to say you guilty or you not. I can't. I
understand that. I'm not asking you specifically to weigh in.
Chuck Morgan has said a lot of powerful information, and I would never say he's lying or he's wrong. He been saying a lot of powerful stuff, so I listen to that brother a lot.
The reason that we're having this conversation is because mutually on your platform is somebody saying the opposite of what I've lived through, and I'm saying is true. So my question is, what would be the implications if I was lying? So would I be an agent? Would I be getting paid? Would I be what would be the implications of me lying? Because if I'm not telling the truth, then I'm lying. So if I'm lying, what would that make me?
Let me ask you, how old was you when this happened to you?
I was 7 years old.
You were 7
on my
years
birthday.
old?
Upstate New York. I was 7 years old. Upstate New York.
And you saying that he penetrated you at 7 years old?
No, what I'm saying is, after the party I had on my birthday, one of the women, which was a teenager at the time, she took me to his trailer. When I came in the trailer, there was a cartoon porno on, and she started taking my pants down and touching me or whatever. And then he's on the right. I see him. He's taking his clothes off, his pants off, and he comes towards me. Now, you know, that was the first incident when I was 7 years old. You know, now you're asking me, did he try to anally penetrate me on that specific event? No, that's the first time it happened. But there's been times when it happened in Georgia after upstate where he did try to penetrate. Every time he tried to penetrate, anally penetrate me. You know, it just wasn't successful for him. You know, but there was other things done. You know, and there was always a third. There was always a woman there. You know, so like
that's just great.
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave it.
What was the video?
I'm talking about like after he caught the case. He got
like 3 years ago.
Yeah, it was like right after he caught the case.
Well, that shit was like when everybody was getting it, and then so once I got the news of it, that's when I condemned his ass. Yeah. So when I hit you up, you was on some shit like, yo, brother, I'm not letting you come on my platform till you denounce Polight. Everybody, check it out, check it out.
I'm wrong for that?
Yes. You know why you're wrong for that? Because you're not doing your research as a young brother. I denounced Polight damn near 3 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about this before when Polight wasn't here, but I think it's important for, you know, again, I want to say that people say that I'm Jewish.
That's where my wealth comes in, because I don't complain that it don't exist. I put it there, you know. So what I got riding for me, like you were saying in your world, but I got riding for me.
So when I hit you up, you was on some shit like, yo, brother, I'm not letting you come on my platform till you denounce Polight. Everybody, check it out, check it out.
I'm wrong for that?
Yes. You know why you're wrong for that? Because you're not doing your research as a young brother. I denounced Polight damn near 3 years ago.
So what I got riding for me, like you were saying in your world, what I got riding for me is that I'm so dark.
I denounced Polight damn near 3 years ago. I denounced Polight damn near 3 years ago.
Making mistakes, Saneter.
I denounced Polight damn near 3 years ago. I denounced Polight damn near 3 years ago. I was going in. And so I just wanted to play that little clip right there just to get y'all ready. Now I think you're ready. I denounced Polight damn near 3 years ago. And so what I'm going to do is show you why Brother Polight was one of the most feared, comedic, steady brothers amongst the Hebrew Israelites. I denounced Polight damn near 3 years ago. Brother Polight was feared. You best believe the Hebrews was afraid of him. They didn't want no smoke with Brother Polight. Because I defended him, brother.
Right after he caught the case, bro. You put him on your platform, bro, and you was defending him, bro.
Pull up the video. Pull up the video.
I send it to me right now.
Don't you fucking dare talk to me about I'm letting Polight on. Polight has not been found guilty.
Right after he caught the case, please, rabbit hole research, please.
After he caught the case, listen, nobody even knew none of that shit, what was going on.
So he did not come on your platform after he caught the case, bro.
I didn't know nothing about what was going on. What is he talking about? This is the first time I'm hearing everything. And so, yeah, show me the video. I need to see that.
Hold on.
Don't you fucking dare talk to me about I'm letting Polight on. Polight has not been found guilty.
I'm gonna leave it.
What was the video?
I'm talking about like after he caught the case. He got
like 3 years ago.
Yeah, it was like right after he caught the case.
Well, that shit was like when everybody was getting it, and then so once I got the news of it, that's when I condemned his ass. Don't you fucking dare talk to me about I'm letting Polight on. Polight has not been found guilty.
I feel you, but you're not supposed to co-sign.
Now check this out, though, brother. Check this out, brother.
Was there or was there not DNA? His DNA found on that young woman.
Yes, it was the DNA found on I think on her shirt or something like that.
Oh, and then nothing to talk about. No, but what are you saying? You asked me that question, I answered you. I'm saying that you knew that, and you still was like, yo, no, listen to me, brother. Slow down. I did not know that, brother. That's what I'm trying to tell you. This is all fresh and all new. I didn't know none of that. So when you said he came on that first time, I didn't know none of that about the DNA. Nobody really got that story until later on. So once they got the story later on, Saneter been condemned them. I'm not going to be long at all. For those of y'all who didn't catch the show, the stream yesterday with brother Black Jesus Minister and brother Sanchez, brother Polight called in last night to challenge brother Sanchez. Right after the show, Polight called me and asked me to see if Sanchez want that smoke, want that fire. So brother Polight wants to get back in the ring, and he wants Sanchez to be on the chopping block. And so for those of y'all who missed it, I'm going to play it for you. And then we're going to deal with brother Polight and Sanchez and see what y'all want. If y'all want that, I can give it to you. All right? If y'all want that smoke, y'all want that fire, Sanchez said he's willing to do it. He's willing to get in the ring with a bigger fish. And so without any further ado, here we go. If y'all missed it. All right. I gotta move on to the next person. I got a caller on the line. Peace and Black Power family. What's your name? Where you calling from? This is Brother Polight.
On social media, on in this case, Your Honor, is that this is a media case. He was arrested for punishable by life crimes. He should have been held no bond. However, this is one of those charges where the PBL comes in at the very end of the charge, and I think the clerk's office made an error, allowed him to bond out prior to seeing a bond appearance, or prior to going to bond hearing. Somehow I think he was given standard bond of $21,000, $10,000 on count 1 and count 2, and then $1,000 on count 3, Judge. My issue, Judge, is that there's no stay-away order on the case yet. That's why, Your Honor, asked the defendant to be present. I also am very concerned that the defendant has been essentially terrorizing the victim. I mean, the victim's 14 years old, and there's been a lot of...
Since the arrest?
Since the arrest, Judge, he's been very communicative he's been very vocal on social media, there's been videos of the victim drugged by this defendant leaked online. Your Honor, on this case, we do have DNA showing that the defendant's sperm was on the victim's clothing.
Your Honor, may I ask why any of this is appropriate considering no motion has been filed?
My issue, Judge, is that there's no stay-away order on the case yet. That's why, Your Honor, asked the defendant to be present. I also am very concerned that the defendant has been essentially terrorizing the victim. I mean, the victim's 14 years old, and there's been a lot of...
Since the arrest?
Since the arrest, Judge, he's been very communicative he's been very vocal on social media, there's been videos of the victim drugged by this defendant leaked online. Your Honor, on this case, we do have DNA showing that the defendant's sperm was on the victim's clothing.
Your Honor, may I ask why any of this is appropriate considering no motion has been filed?
My issue, Judge, is that there's no stay-away order on the case yet. That's why, Your Honor, asked the defendant to be present. I also am very concerned that the defendant has been essentially terrorizing the victim. I mean, the victim's 14 years old, and there's been a lot of...
Since the arrest?
Since the arrest, Judge, he's been very communicative he's been very vocal on social media, there's been videos of the victim drugged by this defendant leaked online. Your Honor, on this case, we do have DNA showing that the defendant's sperm was on the victim's clothing.
Your Honor, may I ask why any of this is appropriate considering no motion has been filed?
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't like being ambushed with all of this. This is...
Nor do I, Your Honor. This is entirely inappropriate.
If in fact the state was seeking a motion for pretrial detention, they should have done it. I mean,
Judge,
now, as far as the stay-away order is concerned, I can certainly do that, but I just can't go ahead with allegations from the state without giving notice to the defense. I mean, certainly I would hear it, but I can't do this in a vacuum like this. So the only thing that I know that this was reset for, which was advised to me the last time, is that the stay away order was not properly presented, and I'm ready and able to do that at this time.
Judge, you are the first appearance, Judge, regarding the information that was filed, Judge. He was charged with a total of 6 counts, Judge. And they're different. They're all different from the charges, except for
Again,
one.
Your Honor, excuse me, I have to interrupt. This is entirely...
Hold on. Mr. Terrace, hold on. Let her finish. Just let her finish. I'll allow you to make your argument. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. He has been charged with 6 counts. One of them is the same, but there's 5 additional counts, Your Honor. So Your Honor does have to set bond on those counts. And then the stay away order has to be set. I will be filing a motion to increase bond. And I understand that Your Honor does not want to be ambushed. I will file that at a later time, but I did want to put the court on notice that with regards to the other bond amounts that need to be set, Judge.
All right.
So we definitely have to address bond.
Okay, now, did you have a response, Mr. Taras, and then I will deal with the information.
Yes, Your Honor. We don't. There is no motion pending before the court. The state, no one. Our side certainly did not ask for a schedule bond. That was something that the state of Florida decided to place on this case. Those charges were higher charges, and they were downfiled. Doesn't matter that there was more charges that were listed on the information. These are downfiled charges. Mr. NOAK is out on constitutional bond. There's no motion pending before this court. And there's no need for Ms. Garcia to just ambush us with additional information that she feels the court and the media in her speak should hear. So we are entirely prepared to address the motion that's before us. Not another word needs to be said regarding a motion that's not pending before this court. We do and are prepared to address the no contact situation today.
Okay. Now, first things first. First thing I have is I have an information that's been given to me by the clerk.
That situation
was filed
today.
on September 14th, which was 3 days ago. And again, I have many cases on my calendar. Has this defendant been arraigned on this information?
He has, Your Honor.
He has, Judge.
He has. Okay, so he has been arraigned, and I am looking at, there are a total of 6 counts. I, at this point, do not see that there are any non-bondable offenses. And there appears to be a second-degree felony for count 1, second-degree felony count 2. 3 is also second-degree, 4 second-degree, 5 is a first-degree misdemeanor, and 6 is a third-degree felony. So, have all of the bonds been addressed at the time of the arraignment?
No, Judge.
No, Your Honor.
Okay, well, that's what we need to do as far as that is concerned. And I will... What was he out on previously? Let's just start with that.
He was out on count 1 and count 2 for $10,000 each, and then count 3 on the information was a misdemeanor, so that was $1,000. So right now he has a total of $21,000 bond.
Okay, so 1 and 2. So what was added in the information?
So the counts 1 through 4 are all second-degree felonies. Those were not on the information on the.
Were not originally charged?
Correct. Also, Judge, count 6 is interference of custody. That one also was not charged. Count 5 was charged as count number 3 on the arrest form. So that one should stay $1,000.